Welcome to the Oh Brother podcast. I'm your host, Dan Smith. Alongside me, as always, my brother from the same mother, Mike Smith.
How's it going, Dan?
It's going good, man. July 16th, 2021. And we are back again after what we deemed our worst episode ever. Ever. So that bodes well for this episode. This must be one of our better
It's going to be a killer
ever. Yeah.
Phase 4 of the Marvel Universe.
That's right. So we're going to be talking about Black Widow today. And we, before we get into the meat of that, though, let me just say a little business up front. For those of you that are not currently following us, make sure that you do. In the best way, the absolute best way to find all things Oh Brother is to go out to our official website, which is OHB as in Brother Podcast.com. That's ohbpodcast.com. And you can find links to all of our social media out there. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel from there and access all of our videos. And that really does help us out if you check us out on YouTube and subscribe. We appreciate that. And if you like the show and you like what we're doing, make sure you tell a friend. Get them to subscribe. Get them to subscribe to any one of the podcast platforms. We're everywhere. We're on Apple Podcasts, Pandora, Google, Amazon, Spotify, like you name it, we're out there. I even recently found out we're on Audible, which I didn't know.
We're on some we don't even know.
Yeah. So
that's Amazon, right?
Yeah, that's Amazon, yeah. Right. So if you like what we're doing, make sure that you spread the news, and we would really appreciate that for sure. We were holding up, for those who are listening, Mike and I were holding up our Oh Brother mugs, which has our website on there. And I was talking with, I think we can say now, a friend of the show, Johnny Durango. He is a very accomplished producer and cinematographer. If you've listened to any of our episodes, you hear Johnny at the end of every single episode. We have him on there doing an outro for the show.
Yes.
Which is very cool. But I happen to be chatting with him, and he just recently received his own
finally
Oh Brother podcast mug. And I told him, I said, Mike and I will expect to see that mug out on your Instagram feed somewhere soon. So apparently there's a story behind it. He said,
did you tell him it was like,
no,
okay.
He said to me, I'm going to have a fun with my story about my mug or something like that. So I don't know if he meant the Instagram story, if he's got some story to talk about it with the postal service. I don't know.
There's got to be something.
I think that's between you guys, but
yes.
It was interesting because I happened to be, before we started chatting, this was, we were kind of messaging each other, and I happened to be on IMDb, and I was looking up his IMDb page again, because I had just got the physical disc of Fat Man, as you know, and I had been listening to the commentary, which Johnny is featured on with the Nelms brothers. And I noticed as I was scrolling through his credits, there's like a section where like camera work, there's credits for work that he's done in that capacity. And his first camera operator credit was on the film, and this is going to blow your mind, 2001 Steve Martin film. Do you know what it is? You turned me on to this film, and I owned it. It was in my physical collection years ago.
Is it
2001?
Is there a co-star, or
there
My
is
Blue Heaven, maybe?
There is, and actually I have a story about that. So the co-star is Helena Bonham Carter. Wow, I thought it would come that like even quicker than that to you. Novocaine.
Oh, I have it too.
I know,
somewhere.
Of course, exactly.
Yes.
And I was telling Johnny that, Mike is a huge Steve Martin fan, has been going back to his stand-up days, like way back in the day.
Yes.
In fact, I think you had his comedy albums, like literally the vinyl albums.
I still have Let's Get Small.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Novocaine was one of those films that you turned me on to. Well, he has a credit for working on Novocaine. So I'd asked him, I said, what did you do on that film? Like, what was the work you were doing on the set? He was saying, he was running loaded film magazines to set. He was charging batteries. He was getting
Right.
snacks for the crew, like whatever it
Anything.
took. Yeah.
Right.
And he told me a story that he said it was fine if I mentioned it because everybody witnessed this, but apparently Helena Bonham Carter almost killed Steve Martin twice on set. There was a couple of scenes where they were driving in a car
Right.
and she forgot to put the car in park twice. And Steve went to get out and it almost rolled over him and killed him. Oh my God.
I think there's
So-
a commentary on that disc,
oh, is
which
there?
now I'm going to have to go back and listen to.
I told him I hadn't seen that film in years.
It's been a while. Yeah.
Yeah. What, seriously?
Well, not a figure of speech, but
How relevant too for a Steve Martin reference.
Correct.
For Steve Martin film. So also, as I was talking to him, just to kind of, transition us back into the topic of the episode, is he actually went out last night and watched Black Widow in the theater. And Johnny said this is the first film he's seen in the theater since Fat Man.
wow.
So that was, I'm sure, pretty exciting just to be back in the
Yeah.
theater. So Black Widow, the 24th film in the Marvel cinematic, not the Nelms cinematic universe that we were just referencing,
Correct.
but the Marvel cinematic universe. Anything
Which
you want to
is-
say to set up? Yeah, because I think you have the entire
I
thing
have
laid
all
out.
23 behind me.
That's phenomenal.
Starting with Iron Man, Hulk, Iron Man 2, which was the first appearance of Black Widow.
That's right.
She's been in 9 films and all the way across to
Natasha
Far
Romanoff.
From Home here.
Yeah, you'd never make it as a meteorologist. We already established that.
No.
But you're getting better at it, I see.
Yeah, I think so.
That's
sometimes.
impressive. And I will go on air and make this claim again. I will put you up against any other physical media collector out there.
Oh, there's people that have beat me.
Yeah, but the content, and not just the quantity, right?
Yeah.
It's also quality, various box sets
Yeah.
and some deep cuts and things that you have. But that's very cool. For those of you that are listening and not watching, you'll have to pull this up on YouTube and see Mike's spread that he has behind him.
Yeah.
That's very impressive.
And not only do I have all of those, right?
Yeah.
All 23,
Mhm.
but I have all 23 steel books in
Wow.
Blu-ray, and some are 4K, but mostly Blu-ray.
Now,
So-
what is, I can't quite tell, but those all the steel books?
These are not. These are the
Okay.
regular ones. So I have
Okay.
them all in regular. These are all 4K,
Yeah.
and then I have every steel book.
Now, for somebody that
and the first few weren't in 4K, so
Now, somebody that wants to get into the psyche of a physical media collector. So do you have all of those and then right beside them are the steel books and then the 4K?
No.
Okay.
I have like a rack for steel books,
Is there a steel book rack?
a
See?
4K rack,
See, it's a legitimate question.
a Criterion rack, a
Yeah.
superhero rack. There's all sorts of like weird racks, a Disney rack.
Now, I have to say up front, when I was watching this film, now, I don't know if this is going to have Mike going on another Premier Access rant, but if so, we'll get to that
Okay.
because this was another Premier Access
Mhm.
release on Disney Plus.
Which I'm not a fan of.
And it's interesting because the original release date was May of 2020, which of course is when Oh Brother went on the air.
That's right.
So just to give you an idea of how long this has been delayed,
That's right. That's
it
right.
kind of puts it in perspective. And I always find it, there's a couple of things just real quick, and I want to turn it over to you to kind of give us the thread and set this up.
Sure. Okay.
Is first of all, I just can't help when I'm watching these films think, poor DC.
I
mean,
know.
they just
They don't get
can't
it. They don't
figure it
get it.
out. They do not get it.
No.
Do not get it. And I had that thought several times within the first 5 minutes of this film. And then I always find it fascinating, when you read some of the production notes, seeing who was originally attached to some of these projects and
I know.
all the
too.
iterations that take place.
I can tell you who was Black Widow.
Well, I'll have you go on.
Okay.
You can give us more details with that.
Okay.
And maybe I'm going to steal some of that thunder, but
Probably.
three names I wanted to mention. One, because I just mentioned DC. And you remember we did an episode on Zack Snyder, the Snyder cut. And we
Mhm.
talked a lot about Joss Whedon, who was
Correct.
originally tied to that. And We know what
Right.
happened
That
with,
whole mess.
we know
Right.
what happened with that. And then I didn't realize that one of the original people who was tagged or tapped to direct was Chloe Zhao.
Zoe. Yep.
Yeah, with of course Nomadland, but of course is now doing Eternals.
Correct. She
Right.
is doing Eternals. Right.
Correct, correct.
Yes.
And then I'll leave it there and let you reveal. Did you had another
Well, I
who
was
was
just
going to
who.
play Black Widow?
Yeah, Black Widow
which
was
I
Emily
know
was Emily Blunt.
because I said, well, here's another reason for Mike to hawk, or promote Quiet
Uh,
Place
A
2.
Quiet Place 2 is, I think, the best movie out right now.
Hey, wait, before I forget, he'll kill me if I don't do this. Johnny Durango, who we were talking about at the start of the episode,
Yeah.
for those of you that aren't following Johnny, make
Mhm.
sure that you do. Johnny has been for a little while now. He's been really, as I said in the comments of one of his posts the other day on Facebook, he's providing a free education in filmmaking
Mhm.
and certainly in cinematography and as a director of photography. But if you're not following him, go up. You can find him on Instagram. He's got a Facebook page as well. He's on Twitter. But if you want to look him up on Instagram, it's Johnny JOHNNY
Mhm.
underscore Durango DERANGO. I'll put that down in the video
Black.
here too on YouTube. Yeah.
Anyway, this is the kickoff to phase 4 for Marvel. And some people might be confused because if it shouldn't be a spoiler if you're a fan of the Marvel universe, she was killed or she sacrificed herself. And she was with Clint, the Hawkeye, who was played by Jeremy Renner. To get a feel, at first, there's a prelogue. A lot of times they do a prelogue before the Marvel graphics come up, but this time it starts with the Marvel graphics, and then there's a prelogue to when she's a young girl riding her bike down the street, and it's in 1995, something like that. And then it cuts 21 years ahead.
Right.
And that 21 years puts us right after Captain America Civil War.
Correct.
So this takes place if for people who, and I watched Civil War last night.
As did I.
To get a feel for how it fit in, which it just, it fits in like a glove. But they were on a mission somewhere. Where was it? Lagos. And, this is when Wanda, who people know now from WandaVision, they probably know her a lot better than they used to know, but she used her energy to save basically Captain America, who was fighting with a guy. And she kind of threw the guy into the air and he blew up a building and it took down half the building, killed a lot of people. That brings in the government to say, hey, we're going to step in and take control of the Avengers because this is
causing too much destruction around the world.
Exactly. And I thought a lot of people don't like Civil War. I thought it was one of the best.
I thought it was excellent
in the whole universe. But there's that conflict, and you saw it when they fought New York, and all these big creatures come down from another planet, and they're smashing into buildings, and Hulk is just throwing stuff around. People are getting killed, and Doctor Strange, same thing. There was a lot of, things being thrown. So I thought it was a very good, a very smart play. But anyways, that's where this comes in, is after they that's what started the so-called Civil War, because Captain America was dead set against it. Iron Man was like, hey, this is inevitable. We got to do this. So there was a huge split between the team. And half said, no, we're not signing. And they kind of disappeared.
Yeah.
And the other half signed on. So anyways,
yeah,
that's where this starts. And she's basically been in hiding, more or less, doing her own thing. And then she goes back to her house and meets up with her sister.
Mm-hmm.
And that kicks off the story.
Yeah, and I like the casting. You'd mentioned the prelogue, and I really like the casting of the two young girls.
Yes.
I thought they did a really good job there.
It was short. It's not a long piece,
No, it's
but it
not.
was
It's not long.
it's effective, and I liked especially the one who plays Natasha,
Yes,
which is what Black Widow's name
she was
is.
great. Yeah, and I thought about with you mentioned DC. This is something DC struggles with as well. Now, I told you that when I watch the Marvel films, I watch them and then I put them out of my mind.
Mm.
I don't get deeply invested in the universe or the extended universe. I haven't watched the Disney Plus series yet. But watching this film, I didn't need to know anything.
No.
It's a standalone film
And
that is
Kevin
fine.
Feige says that. He says, we need to do something that will appeal to the Black Widow fans who are hardcore Black Widow fans and know her
Mhm.
whole history.
Or just someone that's looking for a good night out at the theater,
Exactly. And they
right?
accomplish it every time.
Now, DC, not only can they not make a good standalone film, they can't even thread their own films together.
No.
And you've made that point in the past too when we talked about Wonder Woman 84. It just
Oh man.
it's
And look at the
mind-boggling.
Justice League was just a mess. And then they put 4 hours out and it showed it was even more of a mess
Well,
because they were not on the same page.
right.
And they've got the best two properties. They've got Batman, they've got Superman. If you walked out in the street and went to 100 people randomly and said,
Be one of
name
the
a
two.
superhero,
Be one of the two.
it would be Batman or Superman. You wouldn't hear Iron
Absolutely.
Man or Hulk, or
Right.
it would be one of those
It's
two.
always been Superman for me. And of course, Mike, that's a great opportunity to point out that you did a great blog on the passing of Richard Donner, which was a super
Yeah,
bummer.
bummer.
He's 91, but man, what a legacy of work he left. And not the least of which is proving that a man could fly, as you point out in that blog.
Mhm.
But I've also always been a Captain America fan too since I was a kid.
Yeah.
That always spoke to me as well. Now I will say, like you mentioned, I went back and watched Civil War as well, just to have that context. And that's a great film.
Yes.
I will say I think I liked it better. I
Mhm.
think the action was better. But I enjoyed Black Widow. I would recommend it. I don't know where I am with the premiere access. I struggle with that less from the points that we've discussed before. Again, being a little bit more sympathetic to several things. One, it's the cost of going to the theater, especially if you're toting around a family.
Mhm.
It also just the luxury of being able to watch these things in the comfort of your own home. But I'm curious, was that an issue for you this time around?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'll tell you when it first
And good night, folks.
I'll tell you when it first became an issue is when I'm watching the titles.
Hmm.
And I saw very early on executive producer was who?
Was Scarlett Johansson.
Correct.
Right.
So it made me think, okay, she's got points on this movie. And I mean, you pointed out, it's been a year and a half. The movie's just been sitting there collecting dust. And I think it's because she and I'm not knocking her for this because everybody
wants
that
box office take.
If you sign a contract and part of that contract is you get a piece of the box office, that's the biggest chunk.
Of course.
The 5 million they get, that's chump change compared to what they get.
Or 15, as it's rumored.
Yeah, likely 15.
That's
they all get 15, I think.
That's right.
But when it does $1 billion at the box office, you don't have to be a mathematician to figure out there's a ton of money. But it bothered me because we don't know what the box office is going to be. Because, we know what the box office is.
Right. We don't know what the Disney Plus take is.
We don't know what the Disney
and we never
Plus
will. Now,
we never will.
Have you looked up the numbers for the box office yet to see?
I have not yet
Okay.
because it just came out last night.
Curious to see. I'm curious. I'll try to
I
get a
also
read on
noticed it
that.
was an executive producer, Brian Chapek, and I couldn't help but raise my eyebrow to that.
Mm,
And maybe it's just a coincidence,
maybe
and
not.
that's enough said.
I want to mention just some sort of random notes that I made, but
Yeah.
it was because you said something about this last night when we were texting, or maybe no, it was an email that you sent me and you referenced it, and I was going to bring it up, which is when I was a kid. You remember you and our older brother had this orange, very 70s looking 45 case with all the
Mhm.
45s in it.
Yes. Yeah.
And one of those 45s that was burned into my brain.
Record albums or
Yes.
record 45 records.
45 RPM.
Yeah.
Yeah, these vinyl for the kids out there.
The kids
But
don't know what that is.
that's right. But they one that was burned into my brain was Don McLean's American Pie,
Yes.
because it had that
Right. The
thumb,
thumbs
right?
up.
The big thumb with the American flag painted on
Yes.
the thumb. And it was interesting because it had a part to play in this movie.
Yeah, and the funny thing about that record, we should be talking about the movie, but the record, when you play it, it's such a long song
Mhm.
that the 45 runs out. You have to flip it over. It's like when for people who remember 8-track tapes, which I think you do. Do you remember?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Because our dad had a huge collection of 8-tracks.
Well, he built one into the wall in our basement, an
Yes,
8-track player.
it's still there.
Not to mention all the 8 tracks themselves are in the wall.
Which he was, see, there's where I get the physical media from, Dad.
Oh.
But anyways, the song, like bye bye Miss America, that's how you would listen to
with
an
the
8-track tape.
That's true.
But yeah, getting back to the movie.
Well, and I'm looking it up here too, and it says now, as of July 9th,
yeah,
this Black Widow has grossed a worldwide total of over almost $62 million. So make of that what you will. Now,
what's the domestic take?
the domestic take was,
But that's only
I
one
just had
night.
that. Domestic is
Or 2 nights, maybe.
40 million.
See, that's
40 million.
low. That's
Right.
way low.
But you think of COVID numbers, you can see
right.
that's hints of things are okay. We're going to soon get back to these triple digit numbers in the opening weekend. Easily.
Yeah, because Fast and Furious did 70 million, I think, in the opening weekend. And I think you're only talking about Thursday and Friday, or are they projecting through the weekend that it'll be 40 million? Because that's pretty low.
Yeah, I think it is a projection, actually. It's an estimation. Okay. Now, by the time that you're hearing this episode, which is of course July 16th, we'll have a much better sense of where we are.
Yeah.
I also wanted to point out, because you were talking about Natasha Romanoff, the main character, obviously. It was very cool to see this female dominated cast and the stunt work in this film. We've come to expect it from the Marvel films anyways.
Unbelievable.
But they still, and I will say again, not to just keep dumping on DC, but I would say in every Marvel film, there's more than one scene where I'm like, oh, like I still, some of these falls that they take.
Yeah. Did you watch Civil War when Captain America falls?
Yes.
I mean, I know that was somehow done with.
But still.
But still, it looks brutal.
But with Black Widow, she's a much bigger butt kicker in Civil War than I found her to be in this particular film, which is her own film. I would have thought, but the action in that was like off the scale. In that first 25 minutes of Civil War, man, is that like
and
intense.
Then you got the face off with Captain America fighting himself.
But there are some stunts in this one. There's one that involves a BMW SUV that is just spectacular in the beginning of the film. Now, do you know, had you heard of Cate Shortland before, the director? I had not.
No.
And I did look up her work and I wasn't really
But she
familiar.
has done a couple of things that I've seen.
She did a great job on this film, though.
And I can't think of what off the top of my head. To be handed one of the, Marvel movies.
Well, and check this out, right? This is this is like female dominated, the
Mhm.
awesome cast of women in this film, and you've got Cate Shortland at the helm here, and you got
Mhm.
Chloe Zhao with Eternals. Like it's very
Yes.
cool to see.
It's starting to see a little more inclusion, which is great
Absolutely, and
because that's been missing for way too long.
well, when we did our episode on Nomadland and talked about Chloe, and
Right.
then she went on to win the Oscar. She's
Yeah.
only the second woman
I know,
to
which is
to take that award. Again, we have our own take on the award shows, anyways. They're
right.
meaningless, but
Right. Exactly.
for what it is worth, that is
So
something.
what
What is your overall impression of the film?
well, I liked it.
For those,
And and
okay,
and I think it's another success
yeah,
kicking off phase 4. There's not one of these movies that I would consider a total dog. There's ones I like more than others. There's
mhm.
ones, and I've watched them at least twice because I have them on, I had
You
them
got
like,
to watch the regular, the
right.
Steelbook, the
I got the
4K.
Blu-ray, and then, like, first of all, I saw most of them in the theater,
Yeah,
right? Then I would get the Blu-ray. Then I got the 4K and watched them again. So some of them I've seen 3 times.
yeah. It's another thing in the Marvel formula is we've mentioned this before, is they know how to do comedy, and it's another thing DC
They can't get
does not
right.
get. But Marvel
And
does it, and they do it unexpectedly so many times. When I don't expect it to be there be a laugh, and then I just find myself laughing. And they also, this is a solid story. The acting is good. There's good emotional beats in the film.
the acting's so good that there's already talk that
Mhm.
the girl who plays her sister, we know
Yes.
Black Widow's dead, current day.
Yeah.
And there's talk now that her sister can likely step in.
And that's Florence Pugh
Yeah,
is her
Florence
name.
Pugh, and she's been in a lot of things. She was in Little Women,
Mhm.
ironically, with a lot of like Saoirse Ronan, who we just talked about with Wes Anderson.
Midsommar, who I believe my girlfriend's daughter has instructed me to watch that film. I
Oh,
haven't seen that. Yeah.
that's a Criterion release too.
Mhm.
So there's a lot about that.
But
But
she
yeah,
was wonderful though. Loved her in this film.
and she really provided the humor you're talking about.
She did, and the emotional tone of the film
Yeah,
too, in a lot
both.
of ways.
And one thing I want to bring up, because you've brought this up, I don't know if you talked about this I think you did. We talked about the pose, how they all have
Oh,
that
I'm so
flip
glad.
and the pose,
I'm so glad you're mentioning that. Yeah, the superhero
the
pose.
superhero pose. And, she's typical. And in this movie, early on, the
Have to
sister
say this.
says, well, why do you do this thing where you do a backflip
And
and
you
you
flip
flip
your
your
hair
hair?
back.
Oh, and it was and I thought, oh, Danny's gonna be laughing
It's
about
so
that.
hilarious. And I love that. And see, that's another thing. They know how to poke fun at themselves. They
Correct.
don't take themselves too seriously.
And sure enough, she did it
That's
at some
right.
point.
And then she was
And the
disgusted by
sister,
the fact that she did it.
right. And she goes, oh, and then she saw before she did it, she
Mhm.
saw her sister do it. She's like, such a poser,
That's
just
right.
under her breath.
That's right.
And it was just such a
And
funny.
she plays Yelena, which I don't know if you mentioned her character's name,
No, I didn't.
but
And
that's who she plays.
but I totally expect we're going to see her. Just like, there some of the positions are going to be filled, by other actors.
Mhm.
For, whether somebody takes on Iron Man in the future, we don't know.
Right.
But Iron Man's basically its own being now. I mean, Tony Stark got it just to a point where, you can remote control Iron Man, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
So, but I started and shame on me for not having seen the TV series on Disney Plus, which is free, which is the Falcon and the Winter
You
Soldier.
notice Mike emphasized free there. You could see that was a little
Yes,
jab. I could see a little
it
dig,
was.
little dig.
but I watched the first hour. There's only 6 shows, and they're
Okay.
not even an hour long. They're 45 minutes.
Okay.
So I watched the first one last night, and right away I was like, man, why haven't I been watching
You're
this?
hooked. Yeah.
And the same with Loki, which I'm gonna probably binge both of them this week.
Well, it's needless to say, this is going to be taking up residence behind
Yeah,
you amongst those other films. So,
even if it was bad, and you know what? I saw a lot of negative comments on IMDb.
really, about
Yeah,
what were they saying? Do you
they were
remember?
saying things like, "Meh, wasn't worth the wait."
Hmm.
Uh, okay. I don't know what movie they watched,
Yeah, I
or
don't know about that.
but I thought it was solid. I thought it'll please the Marvel audience. It'll, please the I'm not a comic book guy.
Right.
I don't think I've read a superhero comic book in my life, but I like these movies. And it's funny going back to Richard Donner,
Hmm.
who really is responsible for this whole universe, right? I mean, what was before Superman in 1978?
Yeah, I mean
It was like that.
the things he did with that film
In
were
some of the tricks, like remember in the beginning of Superman, when it's the young Clark Kent, he's in Smallville and he kicks a football,
yes,
and it's like the length of the football field, and you're watching
yes,
that going, oh, it's just a fake, you know. No,
right.
what he did was he hit you know, like I don't know what it is, a shooter.
Like a hydraulic type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when he goes to kick that, buried in the ground is like a hydraulic shooter
Remember we
that
used to have
shoots the
those
football
we used
out.
to have those toy football players and you'd
Yeah.
slam their head down
Yeah.
and it
What were
would
they called?
I can't remember. It's kind of like a rock'em sock'em robots
Yeah, they had
sort of
like a
thing.
hockey version. They had a
That's right.
basketball version. You
Yeah,
slam
the
the head
basketball and he
and
would
it.
perfect. That's funny. That's old school.
Yeah. What?
So
Oh man, now I'm gonna have to look that up.
so yeah, it sounds like we're getting 2 thumbs up here from Oh Brother on
Yeah.
Black Widow. Yeah.
And I was prepared not to like this for some reason. Uh, and it started off, I was like, oh, and I think part of it's because it's been away for so long.
Yeah.
Although WandaVision was great, and I got right back into that character.
I fully expect to receive a gifted Black Widow Funko Pop
Yeah.
in my mailbox
Well,
here
you
sometime
complained
soon.
about
I
having
know,
too
but
many.
I think I'm already
You're
I
hooked.
took the bait.
Yeah,
I
you're
took the
hooked.
bait. I
You're
said to you earlier before we got on air, I was like, should I unbox those and they're easier to see? And you were like, well, for collecting purposes, you might like we had this whole conversation about it.
yeah.
So yeah, it's a solid film. I
Good acting. You know who
thoroughly
else?
enjoyed it.
David Harbour, who plays, I guess you call him the dad,
The
and
the
Rachel Weisz is in
like
it.
the Red Dragon or whatever. The
Yeah, I
red
forget his character's name.
yeah,
But it's kind of like he claims he's the Russian Captain America,
exactly.
and Rachel
Hilarious.
Weisz, who's
You've
all
always
these
liked her.
actors,
Yeah. Yeah.
yes, all these great actors
Mhm.
that they get, and I was reading
Ray Winstone, right?
right, and
He
I was
plays
reading
Dreykov.
today about people that are lined up that I didn't even know of.
Mhm.
Like Owen Wilson, we talked about Westworld last week. Owen Wilson is in Loki, the series.
Okay.
So he's now going to be part of it. I mean, it's just, they've got
Interesting.
everybody, even people from DC
Right.
are in there. Like, I wouldn't be surprised to see Henry.
I
I mean, if they're
just
not going to use Henry Cavill, think about Superman. I wrote about Donner in 78, and he did Superman 2,
Mhm.
which was much better than the theatrical Superman 2, but which was mostly his anyways. But we had to wait how many years to get a decent, and let's face it, we like to forget 3 and 4. Donner was offered 4.
wow, the quest for peace. Whew.
Yes, Donner was offered that, and probably read the script and said, no thanks.
Richard Pryor, I'll pass. Yeah.
I mean, what was he doing in that? That was so
No idea.
stupid.
It was real
He was
silly.
popular at the time.
He couldn't even save it. Yeah, he was
No.
very popular at the time.
Right.
Yeah,
So
for
it's
sure.
like, let's put him in with Superman. It made no sense.
Right.
But, back to Black Widow, it's got all of the, all of the action you expect, all
Yep.
of the great acting, some great shots. It's not a misstep by any means.
No,
Uh,
no, no,
you
no,
know,
no. It's a solid film. Like you said, it's everything you come to expect from Marvel and all the things that you're glad you don't get from DC.
and the next Disney movie is Encanto. Have you seen any of that
I've
yet?
seen the promotion for it. Yeah.
And guess
yeah.
what they're focusing on?
What's that?
The music.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
They're
Interesting.
listening to Oh Brother.
Well, speaking of that, we already gave a shout out to Don McLean and American Pie for music. So even Black Widow has memorable music.
Yeah.
Can't remember what the Luca theme was, but although I like that film.
Right.
Well, all right. So a couple thumbs up here for Black Widow. That's your Oh Brother recommendation on this one. It is a premiere access release right now on Disney Plus. I don't recall looking. It's what usually they're running about a 2-3 month delay until they release it to all Disney Plus subscribers, something like that.
Yeah,
This-
and then they take them away again.
This would be a good one to see on the big screen, though. You
Yeah.
know, like with all Marvel films, really, that's the way
Right.
to see them.
That's
quite frankly.
how they were shot
Yeah.
and meant to be viewed.
Well, all right, there you go, folks. Now, before we go, again, for those of you that aren't currently following us, make sure that you do. And the easiest way to find all things Oh Brother again is to go out to our official website, which is ohbpodcast.com. That's OHB as in brother, podcast.com. You can find access to all of the Oh Brother goings on there. Make sure you check out that blog, Mike's recent blog on Richard Donner. That's a nice piece. And he's got another one here in the holster. He hasn't revealed to me yet, but that'll be coming out soon. Make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel and like our videos out there. That really does help us out when you do that. You can even leave us a review on Apple iTunes. Again, we're on all the podcast platforms. So if you're liking what we're putting out, make sure that you follow us, you subscribe, you tell your friends about it. We'd be very appreciative of that.
And if you don't like it, tell your enemies. So they
Yes.
don't waste their time listening.
Right.
to
You can
us.
direct them to our worst episode ever. Start off there, and then they can go backwards from there. All right. Well, there's your Black Widow episode from Oh Brother. It's going to do it for another episode. I've been your host, Dan Smith. Alongside me, as always, my brother from the same mother, Mike Smith. And you know we're going to see you next time. Oh. That's the worst superhero pose
That's
of all
my-
time. That looks like you're doing Michael Jackson's Thriller.
See everyone.
I was wondering, do you think that, now that we're off air,
Mm.
do you think that people will pick up on the fact that we're not really from the same mother? I've
mean,
started to wonder, we're
how are they gonna
playing it a
pick it
little
up?
close to the edge.
How are they going to pick it up?
Well, just some, subtle hints. And I feel like I slipped there that one time when
Did you use my last name?
I thought I did. But I couldn't remember if I cleaned it up in editing or what
The
happened.
people that
but
listen to this podcast aren't going to figure it out.
You don't think they're probably not smart enough to figure that
No,
out.
I don't think so.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point. It's no different than, Johnny Durango pretending that, Rogue One is not his favorite film.
Right.
How long is he going to keep that charade up?
I know.
mean, that's-
everybody knows
come on.
he's just trying to get into that universe.
Right. It's smoke and mirrors is what it is. Well, all right. I hope we can keep that under wraps
Yeah,
because
I-
it's kind of been our bread and butter up to this point. Look, every time we come on air, I thought, oh, Dan Smith, same mother, Mike Smith. Yeah. It's
Mhm.
like
Yeah,
they've kind of come to expect
it
that
could
that's
ruin the whole
could.
thing.
Now, thank God this doesn't say, oh, mother. And there's no picture. It's just me and you.
Right.
That's legit.
Right. Remember,
That's
we did
legit.
the episode
And
when we
I
had
mean,
the,
we got the results back from the lab, so there's no disputing the
but we also did
genealogy
the
there.
episode where we
That's
hired
right.
that woman.
That's right. She was good. She
Yeah.
was good. She played dumb. She was good.
Yeah,
So
she did play dumb. Pretty
she sure did.